Very unusual. I start speaking English, and I say that today we have Ray Fiennes, actor and director, as a guest visitor, and Leonid Romankov. And there's a wonderful reason for this, because just this year, the new film came out where you acted as a director, The White Crow, and we all in St. Petersburg feel that it's very much linked to the city, because it's the story of Rudolf Nureyev. And there are people like, like Nabokov in America. If you ask, they say, oh, that's ours. Or in France, they sometimes say, well, he used to write in French some things. Same way, Rudolf Nureyev is the person of the world. But since he studied in Vaganova, and this is where he went from to Paris, it's important for us. I also think it's a very interesting case because there were many documentaries, but you were the first one to do the feature film. Anyway, I have to tell very briefly my story about Rudolf, and then, of course, my question is what struck you. I was a student when I was commissioned to be the translator and the project manager for the official biography of Rudolf Nureyev. English writer Julie Kavanagh worked on it. And I know you said that many, many years ago, she sent you some chapters, which somewhere stood in your mind. But then why did you, I know you answered, but still, why did you decide there is something striking for you to make a feature film?
Well, this was the very first impression I had when I read these chapters 20 years ago. And then I wasn't a director, I was simply an actor. I didn't even have a notion that I wanted to direct. But it leapt off the page, as we say. But it was just the story of the young boy from Ufa who studies here in Vaganova, Leningrad, and then finds himself in Paris, sees another culture which clearly is enticing to him, and then at the airport, the Soviet minders and officials, KGB, tell him he has to go back. And then you come to this moment of a young boy's huge decision about his life, about his art, about who he is in the context of the Cold War, an ideological confrontation. So that seemed to me, instinctively, it felt to me very cinematic. But then my life went on, I just thought, I suppose I said, well, someone one day should make this. I think it's a good film, idea for a film. And then 15 years later, or about 10 years ago, I made my first film, a version of Shakespeare's Coriolanus, and then I made a second film about the secret mistress of Charles Dickens, And then Gabby Tanner, who produced both these films and knew of my interest in the Nureyev story, said to me, what about this? And at that point, I thought, I don't want anyone else to make this film. So I thought, but I have to admit, it was scary as much as it was exciting, because Nureyev is so famous, so well known, so well documented. He's such, as we say in English, he's a one-off. Yeah. It's impossible to replicate someone like Nureyev. So you're sort of already handicapped if you tried to do a feature film.
And we have to say, you've never seen him on stage, and you're not a ballet person.
Yes, I didn't come. I came to the film. What was exciting to me was the spirit of this young boy, which, of course, Leonid knew him as a young student. I didn't. But what Julie describes in her book was this very complex boy with incredible curiosity, cultural curiosity about life, about dance, and talking to Leonid and his sister Lyuba, I got a sense of this boy who would sit at the table and listen to these conversations and want to absorb. And that appetite in him, that moved me. That was the springboard for me to want to make the film.
I'm also happy to introduce Leonid Romankov, who is a famous person in St. Petersburg, because you spent quite a while in our parliament. But today, different thing is important. That early in the 60s, you were a friend of Rudolf Nureyev, and you kept it through the whole of your life, because we'll get to that. His last birthday, he also spent in the apartment where you lived with your sister, Lyuba Romankova. So it was very important, your impression of how Rudolf got in the Leningrad in those days, what he was like. It's still a question how you got to be friends. Because you are, what? Obviously, representatives of Leningrad intellectual circle, and he is an Ufa boy.
Oh, you see, he was a very modest man from provincia, and he was interested in us, in our society, in our knowledge, in our interests. But we are interested in his talent, because he was really genius, and we understood it very early.
At that time?
At that time, because after his first jumping onto the scene of Kirovsky Theater, my sister and me say, it's impossible, it's unbelievable. His manner of his behavior on the scene, his talent. Because of it, we became his fans, as they say, as now people say, we became fans of Rudolf. And it was start of our friendship that was very long.
But then through the years, you were not that much of his fans, but friends.
Sure. It's a difference between these two meanings. Yes, we became friends. Okay.
I want a little piece from the film. It's more the end of the story, but it's very striking, very passionate. Let's watch the airport episode.
Yeah, for him,
Everything is okay. Don't worry.
Stay with me, Pierre, stay. They're trying to kidnap me.
Рузи, давай обсудим все.
keep it calm, please.
Я сейчас заору. Я буду орать во всю глотку.
Look. If this is a punishment,
It's not a punishment.
can I just say, if this is because Rudy spent time going out with me and my friends, can I just say, never did Rudy say one word against his country, against his government, or against the company. Never. Not one single word, ever.
Okay, just keep it under control, okay? Кстати, Михайлович, пройдите, пожалуйста, на посадку, я вас прошу.
It's okay.
This is actually, Rev, the whole world knows, this is the beginning of Rudolf Nureyev for the world. And that's almost the end of your story. Why did you decide that's it?
Well, I suppose it was my taste, my instinct, that a biopic for me is dramatically usually a bit less interesting. You have to chart someone's life and you have to obey the shape of their life. And that often is narratively and dramatically problematic. There'll be moments in the life that are interesting, but for me this was dramatically very tight and taut it's a tale of an artist, a young man about to make the big decision that starts his life. Narratively, I felt it's more satisfying filmically than the long story of his life. That's just my taste. I mean, another person might disagree, but I wasn't persuaded. I didn't feel inside myself the hunger to tell a life story. This presented itself to me as a parable about artistic freedom and individual freedom.
Even up to this moment, you had to learn many of Rudolf's words. You know, his quite hard childhood in Ufa, and it is also in the film. There are wonderful episodes of it. There's his time in Leningrad, and there are these very intensive days in Paris. What remained most unclear? What is still strange for you? Are there these things from his childhood, youth, or whatever?
Wow. Well, of course, someone like Nureyev is full of layers and full of if what remains unclear. I mean, how long have you got? And it's if you're making a 2-hour film, you have to distill things that you can be most clear about. There are many things about, in fact, I was just talking just now, in fact, about his homosexuality. Now, in a climate where this is not encouraged at all in Soviet Russia, how does a young man acknowledge this or agree with it inside himself? What's that journey?
It's the hardest part.
What is that journey? Aside from the issue currently about what you can show in the cinema here, which is a separate issue, but how do you chart anyone's sexuality if you don't know them? And how important is it? But clearly, I'm also dealing with. I tell you what was a real challenge is that the world knows Nureyev of the great iconic superstar, unapologetically gay, a man who loves to be famous, loves the audience, and always, of course, passionate about dance, but a sort of ballet superstar. And everyone has, and they read all the stories about the bad behavior and being arrested in San Francisco at a party where there were drugs. This is the world knows this Nureyev.
Yes.
And this is like a great weight and a kind of noise around the director of this film, myself, because that isn't the subject matter of this film. So I have to find a way to go, what is the truth I can tell about the boy I'm investigating for the story I want to tell? And how do I distill the relationship between Pushkin and Rudolf Nureyev, Pushkin, his teacher? So aside from obviously the many things you will never know about someone, the real challenge is how do I distill the things I think I know into this 2 hours? That's the biggest problem.
Have you ever thought that his success is also a result of many coincidences? If not for the wonderful teacher, his first teacher in Ufa, back in Ufa, if not getting to the Pushkin's class, if not the chance to work in the Kirov ballet and not to be sent back. You talk about it in the film, and that's very important because it was great pressure. They were not free. And the last thing is the successful defection, the first defection, but the successful. So many coincidences.
Yes, I don't know what to say except it's probably. I mean, for instance, the being brought into the Kirov company. I think a lot of people. Boris Fenster was the head of the company. Is that right, Fenster? Who ran? Oh, I think he was the artist of the Kirov. I think he, in our film, there is this true story of Dudinskaya saying, "Why are you so unhappy?" But I think the head of the Mariinsky said, "We'll have this young boy." But I mean, I think it was a mixture of his will, because we see how determined he is. He goes to Moscow to say, "Don't send me. I want to go to the Bolshoi or to the Kirov." So it's a combination, I think, of his determination and of course. And people recognizing it and opening, they recognize his talent. The Udelsova in Ufa, the teacher, she sees his talent. And in Ufa, of course, he gets passed to a number of women who are teaching him when he's young.
Yes.
So people, they obviously identify, these people identify something unique. So it's a combination of things.
One of the best episodes to me is his first lesson in Ufa. It's so touching. This very small boy coming to the school. Leonid, when you talked those first years in Leningrad before he went to Paris, did he talk about Ufa? Did he talk about his childhood?
No, not too much. Some words, no more. He told many things when we were together in the car from Moscow airport coming to Moscow capital to Marius Liepa apartment. It was whole hour we were together, Luba, me and Rudolf, and he told many things about Ufa because he remembered his childhood. But in the everyday life in Leningrad, there was he was so much other ideas, so much other interests. I mean culture and museums and music. It was another ideas to discuss.
Do you think he wanted to forget it? Because it was hard, and his father was never supportive for dancing. Dancing was very strange.
I think it was maybe unpleasant for him to remember his situation in his family with his father, and I think it's not very nice remembering for him.
In your film, you did a very interesting thing. I don't know any other cases like that, because there are two friends of Rudolf alive and active, and they were the witnesses of those events. You put them as part in your in an episode when there's this meeting on Tchaikovsky Street in your apartment. Why did you decide to put not the actors? Have you ever done any filming before?
No.
No. Okay. Well, why was that?
No professional films.
Not professional
Only
filming.
amateur.
Yes, amateur.
Well, I've been lucky enough to meet Leonid and Lyuba a number of times, and I felt the spirit of their friendship and their hospitality, which I suppose had been extended to me and many years ago had been extended to young Rudolf. That was important to me, and for me it was like a sort of blessing for the film to have these friends. Because friendship is a theme in the film. There's friendship with Clara, who saves him at the airport. And of course, Leonid Lyuba stayed friends with Rudy all his life. And so for me, it was like to have the true people who have been the friends at the table. And of course, the table is symbolic. The table is where we come together, we celebrate, we toast each other. For me, you know, to bring them to the table felt like a way to almost bless the film.
How did you learn that Soviet period of 60s? Because I think you have never experienced in your life, you know, a country like that. Closed country with a very special system. Because you brought it very well, the atmosphere, with the KGB people, with the pressure on all the dancers when they come to Paris. You feel they all are frozen. And the atmosphere, it's there. How did you learn it?
I mean, I had wonderful Russian actors like Alexei Morozov, who, of course, will come with a great imagination. Even if he's not of that era, I trusted the intelligence of my actors. I also had a team around me. I have Kira Silshikova, who's my translator and also advisor. She's there. We also have another lady from Russia especially to look at the sets and to make sure that everything on our sets. And then, of course, when Leonid and Lyuba came out, I asked them to look at the set for their apartment.
Did you change anything there?
Sorry?
Did you change anything in the apartment in Belgrade?
I think they did.
No, it was the attempt to make the authentic atmosphere with the same furniture, with the same books. It was very well done, very similar.
So you believe in it?
Absolutely.
Good, good.
Many friends ask, is it Tchaikovsky Street apartment? No, it's in Belgrade.
It does look very true. I know the apartment. It's good. Now, it happened that you also came as an actor, doing the Rudolph's teacher. It was a big challenge because you had to speak Russian, and I have to say we almost don't hear accent. It's very, very light. Just a little bit. Let's watch your appearance as the Alexander Pushkin. Give us another episode, please.
Здравствуйте. Здравствуйте. Вы Рудольф Нуреев,
Да.
а я Александр Иванович Пушкин. Вон там есть место. Поклон. Все разогреты? Да. И мальчики, как всегда, 2 demi-plie и grand-plie по всем позициям. Приготовились? Пожалуйста. Прогнись назад, еще назад. Держи спину. Да. 5-я позиция.
We're came back to the talk with Ray Fines and Leonid Romankov about White Crow, the new film about Rudolf Nureyev. You played Alexander Pushkin.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
As I remember, Alexander Ivanovich, Rafe is very, very close.
Very close?
To his image, to his style of behavior. It's absolutely correct. My congratulations.
Спасибо.
That's good, but being an actor, could you think that when you're a ballet choreographer, everything you have to tell everything to the world with your movements and gestures, no words? Could you imagine yourself to be a choreographer?
Well, first of all, Pushkin, I don't think was a choreographer. He was a ballet teacher.
Right, but when he worked in the class, sometimes he would stage little pieces.
Yes, he would variations.
Yes, variations.
Yes.
But I mean, it just for you to imagine this world when everything that you do on stage you do without a single word.
Well, my understanding from the research and the preparation that I did was that the teacher never dances. They say the moves in language, and they have some little signs. There's a whole language of hand gestures in ballet for what to do, so they never demonstrate literally, very rarely, I think. And if you look at the film that exists, which I think you can see on YouTube, of Pushkin, I tried to copy it, which is very, very erect.
Yeah.
He's a little tummy, and his hands by his side, and he just makes these little simple gestures. And I studied that again and again. And when I was practicing with the head of the ballet company in Belgrade and the choreographer for the film, Johan Koberg, they said a lot of it is in how they look at the body of the dancer, and they see that is not correct, or that is, and so that's my information was. I didn't have to demonstrate big dances at all. That wasn't
to make a pas de deux.
Yeah, no, that wasn't done. So,
no, but
which is a relief, because that would have been a problem.
Yes, I guess. I know you talked to Mikhail Baryshnikov.
Yes.
Did he tell you some things that helped about Pushkin, and did he tell you something about Rudolf that helped you to understand why Rudolf, not being, let's say, perfectly built, had nevertheless such a fantastic expression and impression?
Well, yes, I mean, he was very helpful, but I can't right now remember. He talked at length about the power of his dancing and what he did for dance and his expression, and I think he talked about the way he brought in these sort of feminine elements. I can't remember, to be honest. But he talked about Pushkin, what a kind man he was, a sensitive man he was, and also he used to talk to me about the atmosphere in the apartment. It's Ksenia and Pushkin, who often, I understand, had some dancers for tea, or you'd come to this beautiful apartment with a glass crystalware, and she would cook. And so I can't remember precise, but all I remember speaking to Misha a number of times, asking him a certain specific question. And so he was being very helpful and generous.
Did you put it in your Pushkin that it's a man who first have got two great talents, Nureyev and Baryshnikov, and then he've got two defections? That's such a tragedy. I mean, and two defections. I think that must have killed him. We'll have a little episode of the interrogation later, but some people say after they see the White Crow, why is he so? Why is he so sad, Pushkin? Why is he so kind of in a grief? Maybe that's, I don't know.
Isn't it obvious? He's lost his student. He's lost.
Yeah.
That's why. What?
And then it's just so unlucky for him that Baryshnikov did the second defection.
Yeah.
Leonid, what was your reaction when you found out about defection?
I think that was the main feeling was sadness. because we understand, Luba and me, that we can't see him more. It is a huge sorrow for us. But we understand that his talent must belong to all the world, not only to the narrow borders to close in the very small territory. It's two feelings. We were joy that he could dance all over the world, and he was very sad because we couldn't see him more. You know, it was a time of Cold War. It's the Iron Curtains, and there was no idea that we can meet him again.
And you went to the airport with him to say goodbye, right? We have that picture. Please give it, show us the picture now. But tell me, Leonid, you couldn't think of such a possible defection.
Frankly,
yes, we're now showing the picture.
Rudolf
was the first one who did it, but you couldn't expect it, Leonid.
Frankly speaking, we have a small conversation. One night we were going by Chernyshevsky Prospect, and he asked me, what do you think about if I make a decision to stay on the West? I asked him, do you know what it means, nostalgia? He answered, no, don't speak to anybody about my idea. If somebody will knew about it, they closed me the way outside. Because of it, I think that some small mind in his brain exists.
Interesting, but then of course it changed the life. It changed the life of Pushkin, of everybody who knew him. Were you asked to come to KGB?
One time, it was not very serious because there was no pretension to us.
Okay, Rafe, you have the line of this KGB, very bright Alexei Morozov, this guy watching him going after. But this film is not about politics for you, or did you have the goal to show the difference of the systems?
Well, of course, the background is political. I mean, the political ideology, and that's the background. It's just that I never understood that Rudolf himself had a political motivation. I always felt he had an artistic motivation or a life motivation. But so if your protagonist doesn't carry that in them, I couldn't force it on him. It would be wrong. It would be untrue. So I'm guided by who I believe Rudolf is. He guides what the film is. And I genuinely think he just wanted to dance. And of course, I think maybe subconsciously, his life, who he thinks he is sexually, also he arrives in France. He sees that part of him can also dance, if you like. But he was so curious about other dancers. Very curious, of course, about Erik Bruhn, the Danish dancer, who for him exemplified perfect ballet technique. And we have Balanchine in New York. So I sense a boy who's thinking about what are the dance opportunities for me outside the Soviet Union and what can it happen. I also think, I'm interested, I mean, I remember you told me that story before about you saying to him, do you know this word nostalgia, and him saying, sorry.
I think that the main idea of this film is the realization of Article 13 in Declaration of Human Rights. You know, this article is every person has a right to leave your own country and come back and return. Because of it, I mean, the epigraph of this film is the article number 13 of the Declaration of Human Rights.
That's great.
True, because see, I was born much later, but in my childhood, still in the Soviet Union, I could never think that I would ever travel to United States or England or whatever. I thought it's impossible. It's same like going to Mars now.
Sure.
Now you have a wonderful scene done in the Hermitage. It's very unusual that you've got the permission to do the feature film in the Hermitage with the prodigal son. prodigal son is often the returning to either really to your father or returning to something that is very warm or important for you, to some idea or to some feelings. What do you think was on this place in Rudolph's head or soul, the returning?
Yes, it's not, I guess it's more, it's by suggestion, the possibility of return. But I mean, well, in English we talk about someone who's prodigal. They are they're excessive in their behavior. We say he has a prodigal nature. The prodigal son has behaved excessively and had a life of indulgence and spent all the money. So there's a prodigal quality, you could argue, to Rudolph. As a big, his appetite for life was a prodigal one. It's big. But also, for me, the picture is about infinite love. It's about forgiveness and the infinite love of the Father. So that the hands on the Son, which you see the hands, so that's what it's about. He's looking at something that is loving, that is holding him, he relates. That's what I get from the picture. It's about the infinite love of the parent.
It's a very symbolic picture.
Yeah.
There's many meanings.
Yes, many meanings.
You can understand it different ways.
But it's very nice that after the prodigal son, really you put the very nice episode next and you see the continuation of the hands. Well, I'm telling all the audience you need to see the film. You need to see the film. Now, coming back to the KGB, and I have to say I was the first one to open Rudolph's file, KGB file, because I had the permission from his sister. And it was frightening, even for me, years after, to read what they did with people who had to come and confess and tell all the things we expected, yes, so and so and so. And it's a very strong moment of the film. Let us see the interrogation moment, please.
Вы знали об этом?
Нет.
Вы знали о том, что он задумал?
Нет.
И вы утверждаете, что он ни разу не заговорил с вами о побеге?
Эта тема никогда не возникала.
Он что, об этом никогда не говорил?
Никогда.
Это выпад против Советского Союза.
Да нет. Все в танце.
В танце?
Он не разбирается в политике. Он уехал на Запад, потому что он там может танцевать.
Танцевать он мог и здесь.
Да. Наверное, он из-за чего-то взорвался. Он такой.
It brings such a tension. It's slow, but it brings tension. One question about other actor. You took Oleg Ivenko to play the Rudolph, who is a ballet dancer from Kazan. What was difficult to make an actor out of the ballet dancer?
Oleg has a natural talent as an actor. I thought a lot about how to approach the problem or the challenge of casting. And yes, I had pressure on me to cast a famous dancer, but the script was clearly dramatically, it needed a dramatic performance. I mean, there is, of course, ballet in it, but the bulk of the screenplay needs someone who can portray things dramatically on screen. And if I was to take an actor who's not a dancer, I have many problems with selling the believability in the body. I have to have a body double.
Yes.
I have to train an actor, which if they're not a dancer, how do I know that they're going to be good? I've got the dance world looking at this picture. And also, I want to respect the dance. You know, the dance is the center. So if I have a dancer, and Oleg Ivenko is a leading male dancer, that seems to me a good place to start if the dancer can act. So we did a big casting search through the Russian-speaking dance world, the ballet schools, ballet companies, and Oleg, who was on our list quite early, stayed on the list, and then we tested 4 dancers here, and they were all very good, but Oleg had something that persuaded me he could do it, and the camera loves him, as we say. It's a cliche, but it's true. And he doesn't, if he walks into the room, he doesn't look like Rudolf. He's a handsome boy, and he has, he does not have this incredible cheekbones.
Yes.
But for me, he has what I call a proximity to Rudy in his face, and most importantly, I believe he has a screen actor's skill to inhabit interior life. Now, of course, it's impossible because, as I was saying earlier, you can't replicate this spirit. And I've studied so many documentaries, but this is a film for everyone. It's not a film just to satisfy the experts of Nureyev. It's a story of a young artist. So I needed qualities of a dancer, of a movie star, of an actor. And of course, I know there's going to be criticism because Rudolf is irreplaceable. But I think, given the challenge, Oleg is brilliant.
I think it was very, very right decision.
What was your first reaction when you saw him on the screen, Oleg?
No, before it, I have seen him before, and I could see him in the, some scenes and some repetition.
Rehearsals.
Rehearsals.
Yes.
And step by step, he became more closer to the Rudolf image. In his style of speaking, in his style of seeing, in his style of behavior. I was absolutely astonished seeing how close is he to the Rudolf image as I remember him. It's fantastic.
And what is the because I asked you and Luba many times, and I'm very happy to hear you say this, because the Rudik that I was trying to recreate was a large percentage of that Rudik was what I had learned from Leonid and Luba. As you were saying earlier, he came, he listened, he wanted to learn. He was modest. You used the word modest just now. And this is exactly where I had to be decisive in terms of, as I was saying earlier, the noise of expectation of the Rudy that is this icon and, this icon star with this bad behavior and the stories. I was listening, the Rudolf in my story was the Rudolf that Leonid's describing.
Do you think he had the same energy, the same passion, endless?
In the beginning, he was not so energetic person. It was hidden inside of him.
Exactly.
But then he was getting stronger. You can see that in the film. Actually, I do catch that. Very
yes, of course, but it's
a bit of aggressiveness.
It was not with us. He never was aggressive. He was modest, and he was feeling himself as a boy from periphery, from Ufa.
Yes.
And he preferred to hear and to know, to learn. But after that, as I know, on the West, he became a very arrogant and. But it was not with us, it's not in our time.
Yes.
Well, what we've got in this discussion is the classic: is everyone wants to make somebody one thing, and people are infinitely layered and have many sides. So it can be frustrating when people decide that someone is this, and of course they're not. They can be this, what we're calling arrogant, difficult, whatever you want to call. Yes, sometimes. The next day they're completely different. So people are never. That is one of the great mysteries and one of the great happy challenges of acting or directing, is that you're trying to replicate or trying to create versions of the human condition which are infinitely complex. And no person is ever just one thing, is what I believe.
In one interview, you said that you're interested in monster people, and he's one in the line. When you say that he's so outstanding, so he's got so much inside of good and bad, everything. It's a combination. Is that what you put in the word monster?
I don't know what I said. You quoting back to me something I said years ago. I mean, I'm interested. I know I have said I'm interested in all the aspects of people. The A side, we had, the old long playing records, the A side and the B side. I believe that at the very least there's duality. If not, there's more. There's triality or quadruplality, whatever the word is. I don't know.
But I think that is probably what is interesting for the director and the actor, when somebody is not, black and white, and he's very complicated. The last birthday of Rudolph, I just have to remember about it also, was at your apartment. We have the picture of it, his last birthday. Did you feel that Rudolph, even he had AIDS and he felt bad, but till the very end, he wanted to live 100%. He wanted to be as much into business as he could, because we can remember in the last years he started conducting when he couldn't go on stage.
And it was his main feature, to live 100% and to stay on the stage, because he was needed in the audience. He wanted to be famous, to attract the attention of audience. He became a conductor.
We're now showing that picture of that birthday on the Tchaikovsky Street, with you sitting next to Rudolph.
Yeah.
So that would be in 1982, yes?
1992, right?
1992.
92, yes. 92. Yes.
And I feel that his desire to live with a full of life, it couldn't be die. It couldn't be finished. All every hour he want to feel much more, to see the pictures, to feel the emotions and passions. He was a man with a huge desire to live the full life. Sorry, my poor English.
It's good.
Great
good.
English.
At the end of the day, you decided to have the name White Crow, but there was a version, Become Nureyev. No, wasn't there? I've read it somewhere.
No, it's not true.
No, White Crow. It's the only title.
Yes, I mean, I had a linguistic conundrum, because I'm in the title here, because I called it White Crow from the Russian idiomatic expression Bielaya Vorona, to mean the outsider, the odd one out.
In English, black sheep.
Black sheep, yes.
Right.
But here our distributors, Disney Russia, wanted to make it Bielý Voron. And in the end, they believed this was the better title. I don't know. It was at the beginning of the film I explained for the English-speaking audience what Bielaya Vorona, White Crow, is. And I did talk to some people who said, well, if you call it Bielý Voron, it suggests sort of success and strength and something.
It sounds more interesting.
Bielý Voron does it?
It sounds more interesting for me.
Okay, well.
Anyway, thank you so much. I have to say that I'm sure this film would last long and have a long life. That's the first and very brave film to do the feature film, художественный film, not documentary about Rudolph. I think it's got a lot of things very true, and it's very, very fascinating. You don't have any further plans to work in Russia right now. I know you have a long list of your obligations in the West, right?
I have no immediate plans to work in Russia. No, Roman, I don't.
But I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
I hope so. I'm always happy here.
Yes.
We dream about it.
Yes, but well, you've done the Onegin, which I love. You've done the film with Vera Glagoleva, and I think you stopped counting your visits to St. Petersburg, right?
Many, many times.
Okay, and just another thing. After you've done Nureyev, do you see that there is a St. Petersburg of Onegin and Leningrad of Nureyev? I mean, on the streets, or you don't divide it?
No, I think there's a Leningrad atmosphere, and of course, I mean, I've imagined the Petersburg of Pushkin, of Onegin, and of course, I imagine the Leningrad, Petersburg of the Nureyev time. But yes, I mean, I had the same exercise if I was doing a film about London. Okay, London in the Victorian times.
Yes.
I mean, it's completely different to London in the 60s.
Anyway, we love when you come to Pittsburgh, and we love when you do things linked to Russia. One quote that I'm sure you remember is you said that with all the madness of people, culture is something that unites us,
yes.
right? And I think that is very important. When English actor and director does such a project, bringing, first of all, Russian actors and French actors and English actors together. And it's interesting, it's in the film, everyone spoke its own language, right?
Yes.
But you played on the Russian side this time.
I did. I did.
So thank you very much. Good luck, and we're looking forward to your next works.
Thank you.
Leonid, thank you so much. And it's so important that you've done this job for Rafe.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And it's so important that all your wonderful memories about Rudolph, about Mikhail Baryshnikov, Brodsky, you were lucky with friends in your youth. You're saving for us and bringing it back.
It's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.